Clark, new sponsorships to the left, new deals to the right. It's a lot going on.
$50 million. Just let that sink in for a second. That's not just a contract. It's the kind of number that makes headlines across every sports network. The kind of number that could change the landscape of women's basketball forever.
Caitlin Clark, did you turn down $15 million? Oh, that's a boss move. Oh, that's a crazy boss move. That's a flex.
And yet, Caitlin Clark, the face of the WNBA and arguably the most influential player the league has ever seen, looked at that deal and said, "No thanks." Fans were left stunned. Commentators scrambled to make sense of it, and the internet exploded with hot takes. Why would anyone turn down what was being hyped as the biggest contract offer in WNBA history? This wasn't just about money. If it was, the story would have ended the second the pen hit the paper. Instead, Caitlin's rejection sparked chaos and revealed cracks in the league that have been quietly spreading for years. This move wasn't reckless, it was calculated, and it sent the message louder than any buzzer beater she's ever hit on the court. Viewers and fans alike are asking the same question: what does Caitlin Clark know about the WNBA that made her reject $50 million? Stick around, because the deeper we go into this story, the more you'll see why this isn't just about one player's decision. It's about the balance of power in an entire league shifting before our eyes.
To understand just how massive this offer really was, we need some context. The average salary in the WNBA hovers around $100,000 to $150,000 per season. Even the league's top stars, players who've been grinding for a decade, rarely see anything close to $500,000 a year from their team contracts. That's why overseas play has been so common for women's basketball stars. Europe, Russia, and China often pay several times more than what the WNBA can. So when reports broke that Caitlin Clark was offered a deal valued at a jaw-dropping $50 million, it wasn't just unusual, it was historic. This number wasn't about rewarding performance, it was about survival. Caitlin Clark's arrival has brought an explosion in ratings, ticket sales, merchandise, and overall attention that the WNBA has never experienced before. Games sell out in advance. Her jersey moves faster than some entire team's combined merchandise. Broadcast numbers have hit record highs. And the league knows the uncomfortable truth: without Caitlin Clark, much of this new momentum disappears.
So what did the WNBA try to do? They tried to lock her in. By flashing the biggest check the sport has ever seen, they thought they could buy time, buy control, and silence criticism. They wanted Caitlin tied not just to the court, but to their brand image, their politics, their management. To them, $50 million wasn't generosity, it was insurance. It was a way of saying, stay with us, smile for the cameras, and let us pretend everything is fine. But Caitlin saw it differently. She didn't see an opportunity, she saw a trap. Here's the part that shocked people the most. Caitlin Clark didn't reject the offer because she couldn't use the money. She rejected it because she doesn't need it. Unlike so many WNBA veterans who've had to scrape for recognition and grind for modest salaries, Caitlin came into the league with a brand already larger than life. Endorsement deals with Nike, Gatorade, Wilson, Panini, and even lifestyle brands like Stanley Cups are already paying her millions, far more than the average WNBA contract ever could. In fact, experts estimate that her endorsement portfolio alone could surpass $20 to $25 million annually. To put it bluntly, Caitlin makes more off the court than most of her peers do on it.
And Caitlin Clark continuing to rake in the deals by the boatload. It's stuff like this. It's things like this as to why she can turn down $15 million from Ice Cube and the Big Three. These type of deals. The sneakers is on the way. The CC ones is on the way. The logo ones.
So when the WNBA slid a $50 million contract across the table, Caitlin didn't look at it with desperation. She looked at it with skepticism. Signing that deal would have meant attaching her name, her image, and her credibility to a league that has repeatedly failed her. It would have tied her to the same system that let her take hard hits on the court without accountability, the same system that leaned on her for ratings while leaving her unprotected, the same system that stirred division among players instead of uniting them. For Caitlin, rejecting the deal wasn't about turning her back on women's basketball, it was about protecting her own value. Why take $50 million now if it means being chained to a league that can't guarantee her safety, her respect, or her long-term future? Why sell out her freedom when her personal brand is already strong enough to keep growing outside of the league's control? This wasn't a reckless gamble. This was Caitlin Clark betting on herself and sending a message that no paycheck is big enough to buy her silence.
To really understand why Caitlin Clark said no to $50 million, you have to look at what she's been put through in just a short time as a professional. From her very first WNBA game, she's been treated differently, not just as a star, but as a target. Cheap shots, body checks, and flagrant fouls have become a regular part of her nights on the court. Fans saw it with Bria's reckless shove, Sophie Cunningham charging at her like a linebacker, and Lexi Hall colliding with her in a way that nearly sidelined her altogether. And what was the league's response? A shrug. Officials swallowed their whistles, commentators brushed it off as part of the game, and the WNBA as a whole stayed silent. It doesn't take an expert to see the danger here. Basketball is a physical sport, yes, but when one player consistently takes the brunt of extra contact without protection, it's not just unfair, it's negligent. Caitlin is the league's biggest star, yet she's been left to fend for herself while the WNBA leadership looks the other way. Fans are noticing the double standard too. Clips of her getting knocked to the ground go viral within hours, sparking outrage online. Instead of cracking down on dirty plays, the officials seem determined to ignore them.
And it's not just physical abuse, it's political too. When Caitlin's rise to stardom boosted ticket sales and doubled TV ratings, you might think she'd be celebrated across the board. Instead, she's faced subtle shade from fellow players and media voices, some of whom played the race card to paint her as a problem rather than the solution. Instead of unity, her success has been used as a wedge, stirring resentment rather than recognition. For Caitlin, this isn't just about money, it's about trust. How can she trust a league that hasn't protected her body, hasn't protected her image, and hasn't even tried to protect her reputation? Caitlin Clark's rejection didn't just expose her own frustrations, it ripped the curtain off the WNBA's biggest problem: credibility. For years, fans have complained about inconsistent officiating, lack of accountability, and leadership that seems more reactive than proactive. Now, with the league's brightest star shining a spotlight on those flaws, the issues can't be ignored anymore. Every elbow that goes uncalled, every foul dismissed, every biased headline, those aren't just isolated mistakes. They paint a picture of a league that doesn't know how to protect its players, or worse, doesn't care enough to.
So, Caitlin Clark, it has been revealed that Ice Cube offered her $1.5 million per game.
That's what makes the $50 million offer look so suspicious. To fans, it wasn't a reward, it was a payoff. It felt like the league trying to buy Caitlin's silence with the kind of money that would overshadow all the criticism. But Caitlin didn't take the bait. She saw the offer for what it really was: a band-aid over a wound that's been bleeding for years. Money doesn't erase the fact that stars like her have been left exposed. Money doesn't erase the tension that's been simmering in locker rooms. And money doesn't erase the credibility crisis the league faces every time fans see a blatant foul ignored. In fact, the offer itself might have made things worse. It confirmed what many already suspected, that the WNBA is terrified of losing Caitlin Clark. They know the ratings spike, the ticket sales boom, the sponsorships pouring in, all traced back to her. Without her, the league risks slipping back into obscurity. That's why the $50 million offer wasn't just a contract, it was desperation on full display. And Caitlin, instead of being flattered, recognized that desperation as a weakness.
Here's where the story takes an even sharper turn. While fans were debating online about whether Caitlin was bold or crazy for turning down the offer, another storm was brewing inside the league itself: player resentment. Imagine grinding in the WNBA for 8, 10, even 12 years, putting your body on the line season after season, and the best contract you've ever seen barely scratches a fraction of Caitlin's offer. Then suddenly, a rookie-turned-superstar comes in, plays 2 seasons, and gets waived a $50 million check in front of everyone. Of course that creates tension. Of course that fuels jealousy. Veterans who've carried the league for years watched as Caitlyn was fast-tracked into opportunities they were never given. Her games get the primetime slots. Her highlights dominate social media feeds. Her merchandise outsells entire teams combined. And now, she's being offered generational money while they're still fighting for charter flights and basic benefits. You don't think that stings? You don't think whispers spread in locker rooms about special treatment?
That's why Caitlyn rejecting the deal might have actually saved the league from imploding even faster. Had she taken it, the resentment would have boiled over. Every elbow on the court would have been thrown harder, every foul committed with more intent, every interaction with her in the locker room loaded with tension. By saying no, she exposed the problem without igniting a full-blown civil war. But the damage is still there. The resentment is simmering, and Caitlyn knows it. That's another reason she didn't sign. Why tie herself to a contract that would only make her the lightning rod for every bit of jealousy in the league? Instead, she stayed independent, reminding everyone that she's bigger than any single paycheck. When the news first broke that Caitlyn Clark had turned down $50 million, the sports world nearly broke the internet. Twitter, or X, if you want to call it that, lit up with reactions. Memes, hot takes, and highlight clips spread like wildfire. Some fans were stunned, calling her decision reckless. Who turns down life-changing money, they asked. Others hailed her as fearless, saying she was standing up to a league that has taken her for granted. And that division is exactly what makes this moment so electrifying. It's not just a contract story, it's a cultural flashpoint. Think about it. This is women's basketball dominating headlines on ESPN, Bleacher Report, and every major outlet. Not because of a championship win, but because one player dared to say no. Sports radio shows were buzzing with debates. Was Caitlyn making a smart business move, betting on herself, or was she risking it all for pride? Even people who've never watched a WNBA game in their lives suddenly had an opinion. And that's the Caitlyn Clark effect. She makes people care whether they love her or hate her. But the media didn't stop at debate. Some outlets spun it as Caitlyn being ungrateful, suggesting she was setting back the progress of women's sports by rejecting such a groundbreaking deal. Others framed it as heroic, painting her as the athlete willing to stand up against a flawed system. And while both sides shouted back and forth, one thing became clear. Caitlyn's rejection wasn't just about her, it was about power. She shifted the conversation from how much will the WNBA pay her to what does this say about the league itself? And that's a narrative the WNBA leadership can't control, no matter how much money they throw at it.
Here's where Caitlyn's decision transforms from shocking to iconic. Rejecting $50 million wasn't about a paycheck, it was about control. It was about proving that she doesn't need the league nearly as much as the league needs her. Right now, Caitlyn Clark is bigger than basketball. She's not just a WNBA player, she's a global brand. She's on billboards in Times Square, starring in commercials that air during the NBA Finals, and selling sneakers and cups that fly off shelves. That's influence most players, male or female, can only dream of. By rejecting the contract, Caitlyn protected something far more valuable than cash: her freedom. If she'd signed, her image would have been chained to the league's reputation, for better or for worse. Every time the WNBA fumbled with officiating, every time league leadership ignored controversy, every time a rival player threw shade, it would have reflected back on her. She would have been tied to a system that, in her eyes, hasn't earned her loyalty. Instead, she chose independence. She showed the world that no dollar amount can buy back respect once it's lost.
And here's the real kicker. Caitlyn didn't even have to threaten to leave. Just the thought of her walking away is enough to terrify the WNBA. Imagine broadcasts without her highlights. Imagine arenas without sellout crowds. Imagine sponsorships drying up and TV ratings collapsing overnight. That's the nightmare the league faces. And that's why the $50 million offer wasn't generosity. It was panic. Caitlyn Clark flipped the script and reminded everyone watching that true power doesn't come from contracts. It comes from leverage. And right now, she has more leverage than any athlete in women's basketball history. Now that Caitlyn Clark has turned down the most jaw-dropping deal in WNBA history, the question on everyone's mind is, what's next? The beauty of this situation is that Caitlyn has options, more than most athletes could ever dream of. She could follow in the footsteps of legends like Diana Taurasi or Brittany Griner and take her talents overseas, where contracts in Europe or Asia often dwarf WNBA salaries. Imagine Caitlyn suiting up for a powerhouse EuroLeague team, earning millions while still building her brand internationally. The global spotlight would only grow bright, or maybe she decides to double down on endorsements, skipping the grind of a league schedule altogether. After all, her face is already on commercials, her name is on merchandise, and her fan base stretches far beyond basketball. She could become a full-fledged global ambassador for the sport without ever needing to lace up for another WNBA season. That kind of independence is rare and incredibly powerful. Of course, there's also the possibility that Caitlin plays the long game, waiting out the WNBA until it proves it can truly protect her, respect her, and rebuild credibility. That move would keep the league on edge, forcing them to answer tough questions and make real changes. And that's the scary part for the commissioner's office. Caitlin doesn't have to make a single announcement to shake the league's foundation. The uncertainty alone is enough to make sponsors hesitate, networks worry, and executives sweat. Her future is wide open, and that unpredictability is Caitlin Clark's greatest weapon right now.
At the end of the day, Caitlin Clark's rejection of $50 million isn't just about money. It's about principles, power, and respect. By saying no, she sent a message not just to the WNBA, but to the entire sports world. No paycheck is big enough to make her ignore mistreatment, bias, or incompetence. She proved that an athlete's value isn't defined by what a league offers, but by the leverage they hold, the brand they've built, and the respect they demand. Caitlin didn't just turn down a contract. She turned down a broken system that has failed to protect its brightest star. Think about the symbolism here. The WNBA thought they had Caitlin cornered, that dangling the biggest number in league history would make her grateful, obedient, and tied to their future. Instead, she flipped the script. She reminded everyone that the league needs her more than she'll ever need them. She's not just a player anymore, she's a movement. She's proof that athletes, especially women, don't have to accept disrespect just to get paid.
And now the ball is in the WNBA's court. Will they step up, fix the problems, and prove they can be worthy of their brightest star? Or will they watch the momentum crumble without her? Fans are watching, the media is watching, the entire sports world is watching. Caitlin Clark's decision wasn't just a rejection, it was a warning shot. And if the WNBA doesn't change, they might just lose the very player who put them on the global stage. So, what do you think? Was Caitlin Clark's decision fearless or foolish? Did she just save her legacy, or did she risk too much? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from over. And if you want to stay on top of every twist in Caitlin's journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and join the conversation, because the next chapter might just be the most shocking one yet.